I use a dating site to hopefully find a decent person to go out with and try to make connections. This dating site sadly has a lot of duds and very few decent folk available on there. However, I remained optimistic and kept going back to check my messages and things. I received a message from a normal looking guy who seemed to have a lot of good going for him. After a bit of talking, I felt really comfortable giving him my personal phone number, something I rarely ever do. We talked on the phone and found out that we had many things in common. Both of us were nerdy and had some form of collection of nerdy things. At that point, I really wanted to meet him in person. So we set up a day to go out for some brunch at a local place. He told me he was excited to meet me, and I told him that I was excited too. On the day of the date, we had our lovely brunch and talked about various things. He was an extremely tall guy and built like an ox. It was almost a little intimidating, but I do like some tall guys, so that didn't bother me as much. After some time talking, he got a text from his mom asking him where he was at and that she needed him to come help her with his dad. He told me after the conversation with his mom that his dad was not doing well and was basically in hospice care at home. I gave him my condolences and said it was fine to cut the date off short so he can go take care of his dad. I even told him I'd like to see him again sometime soon when he was able to, which he felt the same way about. As we left the restaurant and I headed for my car, we ended up stopping for a short time and conversed just a little longer. But then, all of a sudden, he asked me if I wanted to feel him. I was taken aback by what he said and asked him what he meant. It was so out of nowhere that I didn't think he meant his groin. I looked around nervously from the parking lot, looking to see if there was anybody nearby that I could flag down for some help. Sadly, there was no one, and so my attention turned back to him. Afraid of what he might do, and him waiting there, waiting for me to touch him, I shakingly reached my hand and tried to aim not directly upon his crotch. Then I announced, "Oh yeah, sure I can feel it." I laughed nervously and lied, but then he forcefully grabbed my hand and brought it to his groin. Thankfully, I still didn't feel it, as I was still kind of aimed at offset. He asked me if I felt it now, and I lied once again and said yeah, I felt it. I was so afraid and was at a loss for words. He towered over me like a skyscraper. If he wanted to, he could have just easily lifted me up, put a hand over my mouth, and shoved me into his car without breaking a sweat. To cut the awkward silence, I said, "Well, I better get back to my car now." He said goodbye and left to go to his car, and I torpedoed to my own car and locked the doors as soon as I sat on my seat. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel and headed home. I kept glancing into my rear-view mirror to make sure he did not follow me. When I got home, I washed my hands thoroughly, even though I didn't actually touch him. Just the thought of it made me sick, and washing my hands made me feel at least a little slightly better than before. After that day, I never texted him back or answered his phone calls. Now, here's where things got more scary. So, I knew what his name was, and he had mentioned what his dad's name was. But on my own, I discovered what his middle and last name happened to be. I then used his full name to look up any sort of criminal report or any information I could obtain about him. I needed to know everything, especially if he was a criminal. The first thing I saw with his full name was an article about a woman whose body was found on the side of the highway in a sleeping bag or in a black bag. As I read the article, I noticed certain names being used. First off, his name, it matched. Then, later in the article, after reading about what he had done to the woman, they had a portion where the journalist spoke with his parents. Then, his dad's nickname came up, the same name he told me his dad was. To seal the deal that this was the same guy was that the dates and his age matched up. He went to prison for only 10 or less years. When he got on the dating site and talked to me, he must have just gotten out of prison about a month before. It all hit me like a ton of bricks at once. I just went on a date with the man who killed the woman, and he never told me. Had I known beforehand, I never, ever would have gone on a date with him. I would never have given him my personal number. Since then, I've hoped he hasn't searched for my address. I rested uneasy for months since discovering his crime. I will start my story with the fact that my dad, a prominent surgeon in California in his time, had a business partner, another surgeon, who actually was in fact one of the victims of the Golden State Killer. That happened before I was born, and growing up, I never really knew of the story, nor understood why he was such a paranoid helicopter dad. I found out years later about it, and that he had several experiences which led him to believe he, like his business partner had been, was being stalked by Joseph James D'Angelo Jr. Now, in retrospect, I believe what happened to me was one of them. Anyways, when I was 5 years old, my mom and I were home alone in the house we just moved into. My dad was away on a business trip. I was in the kitchen watching Harry and the Hendersons, and my mom was in the room upstairs. Our kitchen was pretty big, and the TV was in a nook in the corner. There was a couch right next to the TV, against the wall facing out, not facing towards the TV. So I was actually sitting on the ground with my back up to the side of the couch, like 2 feet from the TV, staring up at it. There was this massive picture window next to the TV, but I would imagine anyone looking inside would have just seen me there on the ground in the corner. On the opposite side of the room from the couch was a door to the garage. It had one of those long flat handles. As I was sitting there, I began to hear a creaking sound, and when I looked over, I seen the handle moving up and down, as if somebody was trying to open it. I still get chills remembering being alone in that big dark room, illuminated only by the flickering of the TV, and seeing that handle moving up and down by itself. As soon as it stopped, I jumped up and sprinted up the stairs, screaming to my mom someone was trying to get into the house. She was upstairs with the windows open, and we both heard the crunching of feet running away from the driveway. She immediately called the police, and they came out and did a search of our property, and found nothing, thankfully. They ended up just chalking the event up to just being a prowler. I count my lucky stars every day that door was locked. The scariest part is, there were 2 doors to the garage, one on the kitchen side and the other on the opposite side of the stairs that went from the laundry room to the garage, and we found that one to be unlocked. It was a pure chance they tried the lock on the first and got scared off before they could try the other. I truly believe if whoever was there hadn't heard me scream and run up the stairs at that moment, they would have made it inside. It now makes sense to me that we moved 6 times before I turned 5, based on the fact that my dad had an odd experience of his break-ins at 2 other homes in the same neighborhood. The strangest part about this was nothing was ever taken, but somebody had clearly forcefully entered the home. I think that was a distinct possibility. He wasn't caught until 2018.